We got the Excursion in the shop. Had to pull out F250. We're still waiting on some hose from our oil cooler. Just about done. We'll get the videos up there. But right now we got to do some maintenance on the Excursion. So this will be a good one. So basic, we got an oil filter, engine oil filter replacement, transmission fluid, transmission filter replacement, plus I'm replacing the transmission pan and internal filter with a 08 and higher version, so it'll actually give better filtration. I'm going to be replacing the front and rear differential fluids, transfer case fluid, fuel filters, both of them. I'm going to flush the power steering system, and anything else I can come up with along the way. Then we'll give it a good wash. It's kind of dirty. Also, got a surprise at the end. Hopefully, I'll be putting something on the front of this. It's supposed to show up today, and if I get everything else done and have time, we'll be putting that on there. So, looking forward to that. Oh, also doing tire rotation. I rotate my tires every oil change. Seems to keep them well mannered. My oil changers occur every 5,000 miles. So I'm putting in Rotella T6 1540. Summertime here, we're already in the 90s. So let's see what we're doing today. I got my Motorcraft engine oil filter. I'm running Rotella T6 1540. We're putting Rev X in it this time. Curious to see if I notice the difference. I've been using Arch oil, which has done well. I'm just curious on this one. I also have Motorcraft fuel filter for this one. Get your part number right there. That's the part number for the oil filter. Power steering, I'm going to be flushing it and then putting in Mobil 1 synthetic ATF and Mercron rated. The rear differential calls for 75-140, so I'll be putting AMSOIL severe gear in there. Transfer case calls for Mercron, so I'm doing AMSOIL 100% synthetic OE transmission fluid. And the front differential, I'm putting in 75-90 severe gear AMSOIL. Now for the transmission. Here's the replaced upgraded oil pan for 08 and newer. Basically it's reshaped to allow for the new style filter. There's your part number for the filter. You can see it's actually got a filter element where the one will pull off. It's just got a screen in there. So we'll put a new filter in, the new upgraded pan, refill it with some Mercron SP. Also going to replace the little diaper filter. They say you don't need to run the inline filter anymore after you do this, but I figured secondary filter, why not? We're always looking at getting the cleanest oil possible, so I'm going to run it. Okay, got the Excursion up on jack stands. Now these are the heavy duty 12-ton jack stands. I strongly recommend always using jack stands.
Okay, here I'm unscrewing the oil filter cap, checking to see if there's oil in the reservoir. That'll tell me if my anti-drain back valve's working. As you can see, there's definitely wasn't full, only about an inch oil in the bottom, which I guess is better than none, but I just replaced that anti-drain back valve my last oil change, which was about 5,000 miles ago. This is the second anti-drain back valve I put in since I've owned the vehicle. The whole idea of it to keep oil in that filter while the engine is off. That way you're not starving it on your startup to reduce wear. So unfortunately, that's frustration. We'll have to replace that whole filter setup with a remote one, similar to what we're doing with the F250. You can see my blue cap here for the fuel filter reservoir. This has got an interesting story behind it. When we bought the vehicle, I was going through everything, getting ready for a road trip, and noticed it was leaking slightly, had a crack on it, the black plastic one from Ford. So I called the local Ford dealership here. They said they had one, drove up the morning that we were leaving. It wasn't the right one. So I swung by local auto parts store, got a Dorman, put it on. It leaked right away. So we called the Ford dealership in Kingman, Arizona, which was on our way, on our trip, first stop, and they said they had one. Went by there. They didn't. It was the wrong one. So I ended up ordering the Sinister Diesel one, having it delivered to my destination in Texas. And once I got there, installed it, and it never leaked since. So this already has the blue spring mod done on it. I did that when I did the rest of the work shortly after getting the vehicle. So let's continue.
Okay, so take the engine oil pan drain plug out. It's number 19 on my truck. We'll let that drain for a bit. Once it's done draining, we'll put the plug back in. Then we'll move on to the transmission pan. We'll drain the fluid out of that and get ready to pull that pan down. Check the magnet on your bolt, drain plug. Looks clean. We got most of the big stuff draining out of it, so I put a small pan underneath that. Now we are going to drain our transmission fluid. This is a number 14. We'll pull the plug on that, let it drain for a bit. Once it slows down, we'll be taking all these out. These are number 10s. It's easy to have a swivel. If you have a swivel, to get those back there underneath the cross member. And then she drops down. Definitely one of the easier transmission pan drops compared to my wife's Escalade and my Suburban I used to have, 3/4 ton. So that's what you want. Nice red fluid. You don't want it to look burnt, brown, black. Now I flushed this system out about 15,000 miles ago. But I just did the internal screen and the front diaper filter that they have, inline filter. I didn't do the oil pan conversion. I want to do some research, see what we had, drive it for a bit. This transmission's never overheated on me. The highest I've gotten on a long haul towing fully loaded was about 172 degrees. So temperature's not an issue with this one. Just keeping the fluid clean, but I did like the idea of having better filtration going with the 08 and above oil pan. So we'll let this drain for a bit. Once it's done draining, we'll start pulling the pan down and get that ready. Okay, so we got the old oil pan down. We'll let it drain for a bit. You can see the internal filter, valve body. So that's draining. We'll pull out the new one. Take a look, see what we got. Okay, so here's our valve body, lower part of the transmission after the filter's been pulled. Nothing holding that old filter in, you just pull it straight down. Fluid will come out of this little hole. And this is where you're going to want to go up in there and get that seal out. So let's take a look at the different filters side by side. New one's on the right here, old one's on the left. Considerable size difference. Flip it over, you can see this is just a screen. Flip this one over, other than being quite a bit thicker, it's also got a screen for the intake and another filter there, fabric. So it should be quite a bit better filtration. Now if you're doing this, you notice this one's got the seal on it, the new one, and when you pull the old one out, it's not going to have it. You got to reach up in there with a little pick and pull that seal out before you put your new one in.
Here we got the new filter installed. There's no hardware, no bolts or anything to hold it on. It just slides up in there. You can see there's 3 little feet on the bottom of it, and those feet rest on the bottom inside of the pan when you put the pan on, and that's what keeps the filter in place and also keeps it at the right height. I recommend just putting a little bit of transmission fluid on that seal before you slide it in. Let's get the pan on.
Okay, we got the new pan in, all the bolts torqued down. This is a Ford factory part, it didn't go aftermarket, and it did come with new plug and gasket for the plug, so that's what you get out of that. That's with it installed, so I'm going to jump up. Got the drain plug for the engine oil pan put in. We're going to do the oil filter, fuel filter top side, and then we'll do the fuel filter on the bottom side. Then we'll come back and do the transfer case. There's our inline filter. The bracket's kind of weak to hold it on, so I just use it to 7/8 socket. I use a 1/2 inch drive air impact wrench. I don't damage the bracket. Spins it right off. Clean it. Put a new filter on it. Make sure you clean the magnet. Slide her back on, and then she's good to go. But this is the inline filter going to the transmission cooler and radiator. There's our inline transmission filter. I'm going to clean up the cap. This is the old one. This little spring assembly just slides on the bottom. A little pin there. That goes on the bottom of the bowl. And then this sits up into the manifold and the bowl screws on. I'm going to clean these 2 items up, and then we'll put it back together with the new filter, which is right there. Alright, got it all cleaned up, ready to go back together. This here is actually a magnet just outside of the spring, so make sure you get that good and clean. I just cleaned it with brake cleaner and then air pressure dried it. So we're putting the new oil filter on. I only use the Ford Motorcraft filter. Comes with a new O-ring. Put a dab of oil around it so it seals up nice. Don't force anything. You'll hear clicks on different things for check valves and relief valves. So just kind of work it in there. Put it all by hand. It should just go right down, and then you can torque it down once it's tight. That's pretty much it for that. So I want to say, when I first got this truck, it had the taller cap on it. It was about twice the height, which is typically a Napa version, but it had the shorter filter. So the Napa cap is only made to go with the Napa filter. Oil filtration is very important on these rigs. So I go with the factory oil filter every time, even though just because I know it's getting the proper filtration and everything works like it's designed, although I don't it's not my long-term plan. Eventually I'll get away with this completely and do a remote oil filter mount with a built-in bypass filter as well, and I think that'll be a lot more reliable, and it'll flow and filter down to 2 microns. So that's it for the oil filter. Torque it down, then I'm going to replace the fuel filter up here, and we'll go down and replace it on the bottom. I'm not going every step on this one because Diesel Tech Ron has a couple good videos on doing this exact procedure, and it's not too complicated. So
I want to thank all military members, veterans, and their family members for keeping this great land safe. Also want to thank all our police officers and their families for keeping us safe as well. Thank you, and be safe out there.